Hello creeps! Andy here, and today I wanted to do my reading wrap up for whatever last month was. Was it May? Yeah, May. So, here's the deal. That's what we're gonna do. So in the month of May, I only read 7 books. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I only read 7 books, which my goal for each month has been 8. And this is the first month that I didn't achieve that goal. However, I moved and May was kind of a busy month, so I was like, you know what, that's okay. I can just make up that extra book. But, you know, I still read 7 books, and some of them great, some of them okay. Let's just kind of get into it. So the first one that I read was this bad boy right here, Andy Weir's Hail Mary. I was so excited to read this. The Martian is one of my favorite books I've ever read in my life. It was so fantastic, so amazing. It blew my mind. It was great, phenomenal, fantastic. And then I read this one. Now, don't get me wrong. This book is still great. Like, I still recommend reading this. But it wasn't as good as The Martian. And I had heard a comment from one of you people, somebody left a comment that said that The Martian was still better than this one. This one has higher ratings on Goodreads. People seem to really love it. This one was cute. Like, this is a cute book. The Martian is strong, and the main character is just amazing, and he's phenomenal, and he's great. This one is just, it's kind of a cute story. So this is about a guy who goes into space, and he wakes up in space, and he has no memory, but his memory is coming back slowly, and he slowly finds out that he's on a mission to save Earth. His co-people, the people that were with him, his other crew, have deceased. And so he wakes up alone, not knowing what he's supposed to do or where he is. So his memory is coming back slowly. I think that's all the information that the back gives you. Basically, he's trying to find, I don't really even want to give too much else away because it's still really interesting. I mean, this writer is fantastic, and he really does a great job of explaining science to where, like, you don't get it, but you can kind of, you understand the story and you get kind of like what's going on. But he's just really great at what he does. It is a good story. I do recommend reading it if you want a cute book, but I would still recommend The Martian over this one. Like, that book changed my life. This one was a fun read. That book was amazing. So yeah, that's how I felt about this one. The next book I read, I wanted to revisit Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury, just because it had been a while since I read it. I read it, still holds up, still an interesting story about, firemen. Instead of putting out fires, they go around and they burn books. And there's a guy named Guy Montag who's a fireman, and he starts to, like, slowly question everything. It's an interesting read, and if you haven't read it, I mean, yeah, you gotta check this out, but I'm sure most of you have read it in this day and age. The next one that I read, okay, so this one I don't have. I already let somebody borrow it, but this is Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi, and oh my god, this book was one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It was so good. Holy crap, this is one of the best horror books ever. It's about, this is another one that's kind of vague, and the back doesn't really tell you much, and so I'm not going to really give too much away because it's one of those, I think it's better to just go in not knowing what's going on. But it's about a man who meets back up with some childhood friends because they start to figure out that something in their childhood wasn't quite right, and so they kind of go on a mission to go back to their childhood and kind of figure out what happened. That's all I can really tell you. But what I can say is that the writing in this book is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. The first page I was like, oh my god, is this one of my favorite writers ever? It's really, really amazing. I'll also say that it's much more of a deeper horror story. I like Blood and Guts is fine, but I really, really enjoy books that have like a little bit more of meaning to them. And so this one talks a lot about addiction, childhood trauma, facing your past, just becoming okay with yourself and who you are. And I really, really loved everything about this book. I thought it was fantastic. It was such a great read. It was so fun. It also does kind of toe the line between reality and supernatural. And so I think it's also a fun ride where you as the reader kind of get to determine what happens in the story. And this book blew me away. It blew me away. It was the best book that I read this month, for sure. Hands down, fantastic. The next one that I read was Tess Gerritsen's The Sinner. So this is the Rizzoli and Isles books that, you know, I've been talking about all year. The second one I read and I was like, it was fine, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. And then I read this one and I was like, oh, okay, we're back in the game now. I think the second one was a little bit harder because Rizzoli was the only real main character, and I don't think she's a strong enough character to keep the books going. I'm just really glad that this one went in a complete different direction than the second one did. It's about nuns that are murdered, and they find out that one of the nuns was pregnant, and so they are like, okay, we have kind of a motive here. Let's figure out who murdered these nuns. It's a great story. It's really fantastic. This one you get more of Mara Isles in it, so you kind of get more of her story. This one, Rizzoli kind of takes the back seat in. She's not really a crazy main character like she was in the first two, but I will say, because I know that some of you have read the first one and you're like, wow, she is a really annoying character. In this, I think it's this one, you do get more information and you understand why she is the way she is. Like, you do get a little bit more, or was that the second one? But even still, I think you get even more in this one of like why she behaves the way that she behaves. Yeah, I feel like you're like, now I'm starting to feel for her. You know, it took a while. She annoyed me at first, but now I'm like coming around to liking her. Anyways, this is fantastic. Highly recommend if you guys want to start like a series. They're just fun detective novels. So that one, it's like about the detectives that are trying to solve the crime, and also the medical examiner, I think is what she is, Isles. I think she's the medical examiner. She adds a lot to the story. So super fun, super awesome, really great. The next one that I read was The Troop by Nick Cutter. This is about a troop of Boy Scouts, a group of scouts that go with their scoutmaster for the weekend. And they're like, you know, doing their scout stuff. And a man shows up who's very ill, and they don't really know what's going on or what's happening. And the story continues from there. Oh, you guys love this book. Oh my gosh, when I said that I bought this, so many of you were like, this is my favorite book. So I did end up, you know, moving it up to in my TBR and just reading it now. And I can see why you guys liked it. It is definitely a dark, disturbing book. Like, if you're just in for blood and guts, read this. I would not say that there's like anything like crazy deep in this. It's definitely not anything like Black Mouth is, so it just kind of depends what you're looking for. I will say, because I read it after Black Mouth, kind of everything else after that didn't seem as good, because Black Mouth just blew me away. And so, yeah, I kind of wish that I read this before I read that one, but that's okay. I still really did enjoy it, and I can understand why you guys absolutely love this book. And if you're into just like blood and guts and gross stuff, definitely pick this up. It does get like dark and weird, and it's fun. It's a fun ride for sure. The next one that I read was The Guest List. This is by Lucy Foley. I did not know how I was going to like this one, and I loved this book. I thought it was so fun. It is about a wedding that's taking place on this remote island. I don't think, yeah, the back does not give you anything. It just says, all have a secret, all have a motive, but only one is a murderer. That's all it says. So I won't go too crazy into it. I will say that it's not what I thought it was. I thought it was a whodunit, in that like people keep disappearing one by one, but that's not how it is. And it's a slow burn, like a slow, character-driven, get to know people, the story behind everything type of book, but it's written really well. I really enjoyed this one. And then towards the end, I'm like, oh, this is great. Everything kind of like comes back together and links up, and it's fun. It's a fun book. I really, 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 really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great read. Not what I expected, but did still really engage me toward the end. But if you're not into slow reads, if you're not into character-driven books, if you need like a lot of action, this one's not for you. It's slow, but I think the payoff is worth it at the end. So really enjoyed that one. That was a fun little mystery to be thrown in there. And then the last one that I read was The Seed by Anya Alborn. Okay. Oh, okay, so a lot of people talk about this book and really enjoy this book. Now, just because I don't enjoy a book doesn't mean that it's not a good book. Let's, you know, be clear. And I have said this so many times before, I hate not liking a book because I know how much work goes into it, and, you know, I write stories myself. I know how hard it is, and it sucks when you don't like something that somebody else has poured their, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into. But at the same time, I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not gonna lie and say I love something I didn't, and this book just wasn't for me, plain and simple. The cover is so creepy and fun. The story on the back is really fun. It's about a man who potentially ran into some like demonic being when he was little, and now that he's older it's coming back into his life, and so he's trying to figure out like what's going on, what happened when he was little, because there's some things that don't quite make sense and that he doesn't really have memory of. But at the end of the day, I really felt like this book could have definitely been worked out a little bit more. Let me give you a for example, because I won't go too crazy into it, but so there's the husband, the wife, and they have 2 daughters, okay? One of the daughters is like crazy acting out, calling her mom names, lying, breaking stuff and blaming it on her sister, being kind of a nightmare child, so much so that the mom's almost fearful of her, okay? So parents, the kids. Then the grandma comes to the mom and says, your husband called me an evil bitch or something like that because your daughter told me that. And so the mom goes to the husband and they're like, how could you call my mom that? And he's like, I didn't. And she's like, children don't lie. And I'm like, you just dealt with your kid for the last 20 pages about how she's turned into this like little monster and she lies all the time. She's calling you names and you're fearful of her, but you believe her. And then the mom was like, oh, you take everyone's side but mine. And I'm like, that's what you're doing. Like, I hated the characters in this book. I really didn't like them. They didn't make a whole lot of sense. The things that they said and did were just weird. I didn't enjoy the relationship between the married couple. I thought that it was like very weird. Like they were living on separate planets, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I felt like some of the things that happened in the book just didn't match what had already happened in the story. And so more than anything, I was just kind of confused. And like the ending's cool. I enjoyed the ending. I enjoyed like the little creep. There were a few scenes that I was like, oh yeah, that was creepy. But it just wasn't a book for me. It really wasn't. I'm the type of reader that likes things that are, you know, even if they're not character driven, like the actions of the characters or the dialogue of the characters has to make sense for what's going on in the story. And I just feel like it wasn't fully worked out in this one. So it just wasn't for me. Let me know if you guys have read this and what you think about it. But other than that, that's how I felt about those. Those were the books that I read this month. Let me know what you read this month, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys.